There are no great actors. There are no great musicians. No great philosophers. No great teachers. No great gurus or sages. The only thing that defines great is when other people perceive others a certain way. In other words, how can a person or a music group or an idea or an invention be great if nobody thinks it is great? Otherwise, there's nothing to base that speculation on. When a bunch of people admire someone, for example, sometimes they'll go down in history as being a great person. They might be infamous rather than famous. Or you think of people like Alexander the Great and people that went down in history as great, these memories that we have of these historical figures. Or philosophers that certain people think are great, but others think are horrible people. There are those who admire Marx and those who despise him. Those who admire Nietzsche and those who despise him. There are those who love K-pop and those who despise it. There are those like myself who are Grateful Dead heads, and those who cannot stand the band and think that they're the worst thing to ever come across the face of the earth as far as music. So since a group of people determines if someone or something is great, my question is this: what percentage of people determines this? They say that the little guy, that's historically, when you look back at, in a historical context, sometimes the underdog was the one that was right. Or the person who nobody wanted to listen to or believe at the time, and he was hated by everyone, ends up being the hero, the one who brings salvation. That dog. Dog always does that. So the hero that might bring, salvation might be a person who's only respected by a few. I mean, just think of Jesus as an example. Somebody who was hated and despised in his time, yet today is completely loved by so many that never met him. These are ideas that we think a certain thing is great because of how it affects us. We could also consider leaders. All through history, leaders have been loved by many and just hated by so many. You could think of the last American president. You could think of the current American president. Doesn't even necessarily matter what a person has done or hasn't done. Often it becomes a matter of propaganda and what we believe about a person, who we think they are. But none of that really matters. My point here being that, what makes something great? It's really subjective. How do we determine whether an invention was something that was so amazing? Think of the steam engine. Then think of nuclear power. Now think of nuclear power had taken a different direction. If we had not utilized it for weapons ever. If we'd never even decided that we wanted to do that and instead worked on reactors that were actually safe and efficient rather than refining uranium down to, high levels of reaction and just blown the shit out of each other, or at least in theory, or blown the shit out of some people. But nuclear energy is considered by some to be a horrible thing because of the negativity that comes with it. Getting rid of the nuclear waste, the sludge. I live in Washington. Just east of me is Hanford. Hanford is considered the most polluted nuclear site in the entire country. In fact, one of the giant storage tanks they just discovered had been leaking. That's nothing new. This has been going on forever. They do their best to contain it, but it costs a lot of money. And so there's this new negative image that comes. Now, Oppenheimer, who was there when they invented the bomb, he was one that helped, create the atomic bomb. And he's quoted as saying, "I am become death, destroyer of worlds." And it was Shiva, I believe, that said that. And it was a Hindu quote from a Hindu text. He realized at that moment, it was like this "what have I done" moment, when he saw the first bomb detonated. And a lot of people don't know this, but when the first nuclear bomb was detonated, people who were in the project, in the know, didn't know whether it was going to be just a large explosion or whether the chain reaction would continue and engulf the entire atmosphere and destroy the Earth. So consider that for a minute. But as far as what's great and what's good, that's a difficult one. But these are just the decisions and the inventions we've made. What about, as I said, music? It's very subjective. Art, extremely subjective. So in that case, is there anything that is truly great? And why is it that if it comes down to how many people like something, why is it that there are huge sects of society who think that anything that is mainstream is not great and anything that is small or local, garage band style is great? It's the hipster mentality, but it's very common and prevalent, especially among young people. A good example would be a hilarious meme somebody sees, and then once that meme is too popular, or that clip, that GIF, whatever it is, then all of a sudden people see it and they're like, oh, that's just old stuff. It's like, but what has changed? Is it that more people like it, and then you don't like it now? And I think that's an important factor. Like, there are those who think that anything that others love is great, and then there's people who think that anything others love is the opposite of great. And that the only good things are those unseen things or new things. And once you go to a beautiful park and you're all alone and it's the greatest thing. You go there and there's 10 people and it's too crowded, but it's the same park. There's just one component that's changed about it. I guess I don't know where to go with this, but I hope people know where I'm coming from, because it's an interesting concept of what is good, right? If you want to get down to the real depth, it comes down to human morals, things like that. And people say, well, this is what you should do and this is what you shouldn't do. It's like, how do you know that? Oh, well, it says that here, or I just know it in my heart. There's no real fact book, so we're all just kind of stuck figuring out what's good and what works for us. So find what works for you, I guess. There's my ramble.